Okay, stock valuation models. There are a bunch of terms here. I think the book or this kind of overly complicates the presentation or the different models. There are three different models for valuing stocks. One for preferred, and then we'll have the constant growth model, and that's a model where the uh, the company or dividends are expected to grow at a constant rate for the foreseeable future. Uh, and then we have the non-constant that I mentioned before, where we have multiple growth rates. If you're valuing a stock and you have a, uh, a multiple growth rates, probably the best way to value it would be using Excel. Uh, just a point there. Anyway, anything with a little hat over it, like this right here, just means expected. So D with T with a hat on it. The dividend expected to be paid at the end of year T. So if there was T was one there, that would be the dividend in year one. If it were two, that would be year two, and so on. And then PT with a hat on it, same thing, except for that's the expected price at the end of whatever period. So if that were one, that would be year one, two, year two, so forth. P0, the actual price of the stock. That should be a year. That should just say the actual stock price of the stock or current price of the stock, current value of the stock. G is the expected growth rate of dividends. R sub S is just the required rate of return or the minimum investment rate of return that the investors demand or require to invest in the stock. So D1 divided by P0, and this we have the expected, the little hat on there. So that would be the expected dividend yield in the coming year. The price, then the next one here, the price at the end of the year, the P1 with the little hat on it, and the expected price at the end of the year, divided by subtracted, from the current price, divided by that would be the expected capital gains year. And then we have the R sub S with the hat on it. That's just the expected return during the coming year. That expected rate of return is equal to the dividend yield plus the capital gains yield. So if the expected rate of return is greater than or equal to the rate of return, then the stock is a good investment. Otherwise, it is not a good investment. So that's simple as that. So if we expect the rate of return, expect a rate of return that's higher than the required rate of return, then that stock is undervalued. If that's the opposite is true, then the stock would actually be overvalued. So what are we doing when we value a stock? We're taking all the future dividends. So in this case, we've got expected dividend in year one, expected dividend in year two, and then on out in perpetuity. And then we take the present value of those, add our required rate of return, and we sum them up, and we come up with the value of that stock. We also use V or as for the value of the stock, or P for the price of the stock. Again, it's simply the sum. The value is either term is acceptable. All we're doing is summing up all the future dividends based on our expectations and calculating those. Valuing stocks with constant or normal growth. Growth is, in this case, growth is expected to continue for the foreseeable future at about the same rate as the economy as a whole. The G's constant rate stated as a decimal. We'll see an example here probably in the next lecture. So, but of this model. But so when we go down here, our price is what we need is for this year's price, we need to estimate what the dividend in the coming year is going to be. So we take our current dividend, or just an example of some of your problems, we take the current dividend, which is set in some of the problems in your homework. The They would say just paid, something of that nature. We apply the growth rate. So, so D0 times 1 plus G, that gives us what we expect D1 to be. And then we subtract it divide it by R, the expected rate of return, minus the growth rate. This is called the constant growth model. It is also called the Gordon growth model. They're the same thing. If you take a future finance class and they speak of the Gordon growth model, you'll know that they're the same. They refer to this, or the constant growth model, they refer to the same thing. One other thing to note, anytime we have a future dividend, if we use that, we divide that dividend by the required rate of return minus the growth rate, that is going to calculate the value or expected of the value of the stock in the year prior. So, for example, if we had D5, that's going to give us the price, expected price at the end of year 4. So that's just for future reference. All right. So next slides we'll work through an example of the constant or Gordon growth model.